Hello, my name is Josh Turum. I'm an attorney who handles workers' compensation and personal injury matters. Appreciate you chiming in or listening here today as we talk through a topic that's become common and important in the world of workers' compensation in Wisconsin. What we're going to talk about today are what's called Medicare set-aside accounts, or MSAs. A Medicare set-aside account uh, occurs when an injured worker, or I should say, most often occurs when an injured worker has been deemed disabled by the Social Security Administration and is Medicare eligible. And what needs to be done is an account or funding needs to be done for future medical care. So if an injured worker has a disability as a result of a workers' compensation matter, and it's anticipated that that worker is going to need future medical care, um, we cannot simply close out the claim and stick that bill or the future bill with Medicare. So the question then turns to, okay, how do we satisfy Medicare's interest to make sure that they're not the ones paying the medical bills in the future that were related to the work injury? Um, but also make sure that ideally we can get this matter settled and closed. And the way that we do that is through the use of a Medicare set-aside account. So again, it's kind of a tricky topic, but it's coming up pretty often where an insurance company, a workers' comp insurance company, would like to settle the case, but they need to take Medicare's interest into mind, or need to take the proper procedure and protocol to make sure that these bills don't fall on Medicare down the road. And so what they do is they contact a third-party vendor, and they say, okay, and I'll just use the name John Smith for our injured worker here today. John, John sustained this injury to his back, and he is Medicare eligible and on Social Security disability, and we anticipate that he's going to need future care as it pertains to his injury and disability. And they reach out to a third party and they say, okay, what's this going to cost us? What amount of money are we going to have to put aside into what's called this Medicare set-aside account, where John has the requisite or the enough or has enough funds to pay for the anticipated care down the road. And so the third party vendor takes a look at John's medical records and diagnostic testing and so on, and ultimately says, okay, well, based on other people that have had this sort of injury and procedures and so on, this is what we anticipate it's going to cost us on the long term, or what this future care is going to look like. And they'll actually spit out a number, and they'll use some evidence and quotes to show how they came to that number. Such as this is the cost of an X-ray, this is the cost of a future MRI, so on. And they tally all that up, and the number comes back. And from there, the workers' compensation insurance company takes that number and that information from the third party vendor and submits it to Medicare, or the Center for Medicare Services, and says, okay, this is what we have. This is what we're being told we need to put into an account for John that he would use for future medical care. And what happens from there is the Center for Medicare Services, or Medicare, comes back and they either say, yep, that makes sense to us. If you put that number in the account for John to be used for future medical care, you've satisfied our interest and we're not going to be a problem for you down the road. And John's got to use that medical, that account and the funds in that account to pay for future medical care before he can use his Medicare. Or the Center for Medicare Services comes in and says, nope, that's not enough. We don't know how you got to that number, but if you fund it with this number, a higher number or a different number, then you would satisfy our interests. And then from there, the workers' comp insurance company has an opportunity to decide what they want to do. So again, just to recap, this would only come into play when we're talking settlement or resolution of a case, and the individual is Medicare eligible, and there's an attempt to close out the future medical component by funding this Medicare set aside account. If the workers' comp insurance company ultimately agrees, yeah, okay, we're either going to fund it with the number that we proposed and Medicare approved, or we're going to fund it with the additional number or the higher number that Medicare approved, then they actually fund an account. The money goes into the name of the injured worker, so it's in an account for the injured worker, and that injured worker then has direct access to those funds long term to use them for future medical care. So if the injured worker needs chiropractic care or an injection or a surgery or physical therapy, it would literally be like a standard checking account to access those funds and pay for that treatment. So it's kind of a nice way to have direct access to funds and utilize that account to get the sort of treatment that an injured worker needs. Um, just very briefly, there's been kind of a move from what's called personal administration to professional administration, which means that a lot of injured workers actually have a rep, an individual, a claims representative that they can contact and say, hey, I need the funds for X, and then that person will release the money, opposed to personal administration, which was done in the past where the injured worker just had direct, immediate access and could control every aspect of it. One of the the reasons for the move was just because there were a lot of injured workers that were potentially using those funds for other things. And so the professional administration prevents that issue from happening, or the funds just disappearing and going toward things that are not related to future medical treatment. So again, Medicare set-aside accounts are something we see all the time, especially when the injured worker is Medicare eligible, or when an injured worker is Medicare eligible, and there's an attempt to resolve or settle the case and fund that future account with or fund the future medical component with an account to be used for that future medical care. So if you are on Social Security disability and you are Medicare eligible and you're attempting to settle or resolve your workers' compensation matter, just be mindful that this account is the gold standard for taking care of those future medical needs. If you have any questions surrounding Medicare set-aside accounts or how this whole process works, by all means, please reach out to us and we're happy to walk through your particular situation. Thanks so much for listening.